only constant thing in life is change. And if change brings the unpredictable, we are here today to defend it. Welcome, everybody, all change seekers, to the sixth edition of the Cybersecurity Forum brought to you by SoftwareOne in the modern setting of the Cubic Center in Prague. Welcome. As you know, today we have the unique opportunity to listen to a series of talks brought to you by cyber experts and industry leaders who will discuss how to optimize defenses, how to stay ahead of emerging threats, and how to maintain resilience in the unpredictable world. My name is Alex Szczepaniak. I'll be hosting this magnificent event, so I'll be with you live here and online throughout the day. As you've heard, we have a live Q&A session, so we encourage you to explore the discussions with our speakers and ask your questions directed to specific speakers, and according to time, we'll try to tackle them for sure. What you see here is another QR code because, you know, we love QR codes. And this time, this QR code is not for the live Q&A, which you have on your badges and also online, but this is for our SoftwareOne raffle. What you need to do, scan it, fill out the survey, and you might be the lucky one who around 2 p.m. will be the owner of a totally new VR headset. So you've got time. We're going to close the raffle or the entries at the end of all main sessions. Something more. Remember, especially the attendees live here, we are here to network, to exchange ideas, to take the discussions from the stage outside. So during the break, do network and explore all the exhibition booths, talk to people. If you have a coffee, share it with another participant, share it with a speaker and ask your questions. That's why we're here. Ladies and gentlemen, and now we're going to go to the tradition of all events. And we're going to open it up officially. And it's not going to be me who's doing it. But of course, we have here with us the president, CEE of SoftwareOne, Alexander Kutowski. Please give him a big round of applause.
Thank you. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. It's my pleasure to welcome you here in the nice city of Prague and welcome everyone who is joining us online to this SoftwareOne Cybersecurity Forum. And your presence here reflects how important this topic is arising. It's arising constantly. Thank you for taking the time to be here, to collaborate to each other, to take part in the conversations, because this is, I think, the most important what we will have today. My name is Alexander Kutowski, and I'm leading in SoftwareOne Group, the Central and Eastern European region. And I've been working for many, many years here in this company and talking to a lot of leaders across the industries in the region. And I see how this cybersecurity topic is growing. My discussions with CEOs, CIOs, with IT leaders, we see that the technology landscape becomes more and more complex. The expectations around resilience are continuing to rise. And what I see also consistently is that cybersecurity is no longer a technical topic. It has become a leadership, a strategic topic. It has become also the topic around the business continuity, about trust. It's about long-term business outcomes. And these events, I like them especially because yeah, it matters for me personally. So I would like to welcome you here. And before we look ahead to today's discussions, I would like to reflect briefly on who we are in SoftwareOne and why that context matters. In the last year, Crayon and SoftwareOne came together as one organization. And it's not only about the geographical reach. We are supporting customers in more than 70 countries. But it's also about the services, the portfolio what we have. We are aiding each other. And what is extremely important, we are sharing the same way of thinking. Both together, SoftwareOne and Crayon, we combine a deep expertise in software and cloud economics with strong capabilities in security, in data and AI, in transformation. At the same time, we share a clear belief that the technology should enable a long-term resilience, the business continuity, and not just a short-term efficiency. And this is extremely important. This perspective shapes how we work with customers, we as SoftwareOne, but also it shapes today's program and the purpose of the event. So now is the 6th time we are coming together in this cybersecurity forum. And this platform brought together or brings together security leaders, partners, and practitioners from across the region to exchange the real situation, the real life. This forum has its roots in an initiative started within Crayon. As a small event, as a small idea, how to build conversation, open conversation, and practical dialogue among security leaders. When Crayon and SoftwareOne came together last year, it became a normal situation. It became it was, let's say, natural choice. Let's say like this, natural choice, yeah, that we, as a SoftwareOne group, we take this and bring this on a broader scope. Cybersecurity, as I said, is not a technical topic anymore. It's a topic which is being discussed on a board level. It's a strategic topic. AI-driven attacks, increasing cloud complexity, identity-based threats, and also regulatory pressure. This everything what is defining and redefining how we need to think about resilience. Today, we are not talking about just preventing everything, blocking everything. It's about being prepared for unexpected situations, for unpredictable things which are happening almost every day. And we need to respond. We need to respond faster than the threats evolve. That is why this forum focuses on practical insight, on the real use cases, on the leadership perspective across the industries, rather than on specific tools and products. It reflects the reality that cyber resiliency is built through collaboration across security ecosystem. And therefore, we are also glad to see our partners here, Microsoft, AWS, Google Cloud, Barracuda, Veeam, Asset, and the others. They are part of the broader conversation taking place here. Their presence helps ensure that today's discussions reflect multiple perspectives from across security landscape. And resilience is not built on isolation. It's built through collaboration between the leaders, between the opinions, technology experts, partners, customers. And events like this, they matter because they create a space for open and honest discussion beyond the organizational borders. They allow us to learn from one another and challenge our assumptions. So my hope is that today provides not only useful ideas, insights to you, but also meaningful connections and conversations that continue also beyond of this event. So thank you again for coming here or for being with us online. I'm pleased to open SoftwareOne Cybersecurity Forum, and I look forward to the discussions ahead. Enjoy the day.
Thank you once again, Alexander, for the inspiration for the whole day. So remember, let's keep our minds open, and we are redefining resilience today for sure. So we're kicking off our forum with our first keynote, which is quite unique because you'll see on stage two experts, Alex and Uko. They'll be tackling three aspects mainly: sovereignty, rapid AI adoption, and changing threat landscape through AI. Alex will be leading the conversation as a leader in the cyber industry, and he'll be discussing all these topics with our experienced expert in the mission critical field. So I think they will need a great applause, definitely. So please welcome Global Business Security Director at SoftwareOne, Alexander Värä, together with Chief Information Security Officer at Eesti Energia, Uko Valtenberg. But first, Alexander is entering, yes? Please, big round of applause.
Hello, good morning, everyone. Can you hear me well? Everyone is fresh? Great.
Those are the wrong chairs.
So this will be a very interesting 50 minutes because I will just give a short, let's say, technical opening to the event, which lays a path for all other presentations. And also I will have the pleasure to interview or have a discussion with Uko. But first and foremost, it's such a pleasure to see you all here. This is my third time on this conference, Cybersecurity Forum, and this year we have a record-breaking on-site and virtual presence. So I think we are really deserving, all of us, to have a round of applause. And what this tells me, personally, is that because we're growing so rapidly, it tells me that the content is good, presenters are good, sponsors are good, and most importantly, this fuels our motivation to continue to growing this event to new record highs. So thank you again for being here. My name is Alex Värä. I'm leading the global cybersecurity business at SoftwareOne. About a decade background in cybersecurity. Had the pleasure of scaling to something that became the biggest security operations center in the Nordics. Greetings from beautiful Helsinki, where I'm from. But also I had the pleasure of, let's say I was in the right place at the right time, being in the security operations center in the room itself when NotPetya emerged, and some of our clients got hit at that time to see how does it look like when you have a truly advanced nation-state actor basically firing across the industry, across the globe. And then at the same time, had the pleasure of witnessing the emergence of IoT security, OT security, or the next iteration of OT security, as well as application security. And today, although a business title, I'm still consulting our strategic customers across different areas, defense, public sector, and private sector across the globe. But most importantly, I think that when having that connection to clients, you really see how fast the world is changing now. And the change is something that I'm going to touch upon for the next 15 minutes or so. But first, what is it that we do on the security side? Alex had a great presentation in terms of what is it that we do as SoftwareOne. But on the security side, we're actually a substantial player. And just recently, we had a revamp of our service offering, over 20 services available worldwide, but focusing on three main things. First is to reducing complexity, understanding where one has capabilities, where one has underutilized capabilities or missing capabilities, and then helping them to fill in the gaps, being one. Second one is going a bit beyond security monitoring, managed detection and response solutions to really figuring out how to build a resilient organization from a security perspective. That involves hardening, that involves security posture management, advisory, as well as, of course, managed detection response, backup, recovery, but really to make sure that company is resilient and not just able to detect and respond. Last but not least is secure Gen AI, and now even more so agentic AI adoption, something that we will touch base on today as well, where we really help customers to make sure that once the change that comes with AI and agentic AI takes place, our customers are ready to, first of all, prevent threats, but also detect and respond to them. And on this note, I would like to ask a question with a show of hands. How many of you are using Copilot, ChatGPT, some sort of a Gen AI solution in your daily work? Please raise your hands. Almost all of you. How many are currently using agentic AI solutions in your enterprise? Please raise your hands. Maybe 20% of you, less, 10%. How many have built agents personally? Please raise your hands. Even less. This is a very interesting notice that I will come back to at the end of my section. And last slide about the company, I promise. So what is it, how big we are, and where do we operate? We operate actually almost on every continent in the world. In fact, we have delivery capabilities almost in every continent of the world. 7 security operations centers, 17 delivery centers, but truly focusing on those 3 key pillars. And idea is that at the end of the day, technology matters, but what matters most, even moving forward, is do you understand where your crown jewels are? And how do you not just detect, respond, but how do you make sure that when it comes to your crown jewels, you're staying resilient? Risk management, and technically resilience. That's the only thing that I think currently matters if we look at how fast, how rapid changes are in the world. And about those changes, so if we look at the key driving forces today that are affecting organizations, especially from cybersecurity perspective, first is sovereignty. Over the last year or so, I had conversations with way more than 200 clients across the globe. And especially in Europe, we see more and more questions around trust, what we can trust, who can we trust, but also we see emerging compliance requirements that are forcing companies to think about sovereignty. And sovereignty comes in multiple, different shapes and sizes and forms that we will go drill down deeper. The other one being AI adoption. So we see a rapid AI adoption. Copilot was released 2 years ago, I recall. Correct me if I'm wrong, but roughly more or less, give or take, 2 years ago. Almost all of you had their hands raised when I asked how many of you are using Gen AI products for work, not for personal use, for work. This is how fast the adoption is. Just 2 years. It's nothing if you look at timescales. It's very rapid adoption. And what comes with AI, unfortunately, fortunately and unfortunately, is shift in threats. On the other side, AI tools are amazing at finding vulnerabilities. How many of you have recently witnessed Anthropic Mythos? Please show of hands. How many of you know Mythos? I'm surprised that only so few. So just quick intro. Mythos is a large language model that is able to detect vulnerabilities automatically, but also generate exploits automatically to pretty much match whether the vulnerabilities are real or not. And so far, I believe, well, Mythos broke all the records of finding vulnerabilities, and now you have a Project Glasswing. It's a closed project with a closed circle of companies who are getting that vulnerability data in advance in order to fix, in order to patch their products, because there are so many vulnerabilities that Anthropic refused to open the model for everyone to use. It's a closed ecosystem at the moment. This is where AI is heading on the security side. There is a vulnerability explosion happening. And how to attack that, how to tackle that as someone from your perspective who does not have anything to say on what my vendor does in terms of vulnerability management. That's the big question as well. And if we drill deeper just a little bit into each and every segment, on the sovereignty piece, everyone is looking at sovereignty as a critical topic. Almost everyone. But also, very few believe that achieving true sovereignty is possible in Europe. And at the same time, even if someone would go this way, people are, and even countries are taking this step towards like true sovereignty, everything European infrastructure, European operations. But if we exclude everything non-European from European market, we will lose 85% of the market in IT. That is not only expensive, but it also will directly impact innovation and productivity. Is it doable? Absolutely. You see nation states going open source and all that stuff, but also as a kind of from corporate perspective, one needs to kind of tip the scale or figure out where my scale is. Is it public cloud? Is it sovereign cloud? Or is it data center somewhere? European-based hosters, European-based everything. That is a question that one needs to figure out. Where is my place on that sovereignty scale? Because it's not one or the other. There are levels to that. Something that we're working with our customers on almost on a daily basis, in Europe especially. And then we see agentic AI. So here, about 10%, maybe 15% raise their hands when asked whether you're using agents in your enterprise. So looking at the data from Deloitte, 75 or 74% are looking to move towards agentic AI by 2027. But only a few have maturity to govern AI in a secure way. So why is it that everyone plans to go there despite not being prepared, not being mature? For everyone that has ever built an agent, you start very quickly understanding the value. And as always in business, value wins. And how to reach that gap from 21% to 100%. It's very, very interesting that I will come back to. But also why it's so important, why as a topic this is so important, that is that in Copilots and ChatGPTs, those GenAI products, typically your biggest risk is data exposure. Someone gets access to your GenAI Edge engine or tool and starts querying it, starts talking with it and extracting information. With agentic AI, the challenge is that yes, you have a prompt, but behind the prompt, there is an orchestration happening that has tool access, read access, write access. And most importantly, you cannot control the workflow. You set an objective, and from when you set the objective towards reaching the objective, an agent determines the path of reaching the objective autonomously. You can set up guardrails, what you can do, what you cannot do, but it's not a workflow automation tool. It's not deterministic. Ergo, it becomes even riskier to understand when it's being misused, and even more, let's say, harder to do incident response when you have an incident involving agentic AI solution. Because also, if you can compromise an agent has access, privileges, high privileges to multiple systems that it can affect at almost at the blink of an eye. So when the damage happens, it typically then happens on scale or at scale. This is why that 21% needs to be raised pretty quickly. And the last but not least, the changing threat landscape. Today, we're reaching a point where national vulnerability database that is responsible of scoring and enriching found and verifying found vulnerabilities is unable to keep up anymore. So there are so many vulnerabilities being found that the tools that most likely most of you use for vulnerability detection, vulnerability scanners, if you will, those CVE scores that are usually done by National Vulnerability Database, they're unable to add that CVE score anymore. They don't have the time to process vulnerabilities, all the vulnerabilities. So they have to pick which one to process. This is led by AI vulnerability discovery, used by researchers for good, but also threat actors for less good purposes. And what is actually more concerning today to see that more and more vulnerabilities, once they have identified and released to the public, exploits are already available. 32%. That is a major increase. How many of you are familiar with Log4j or Log4Shell vulnerability? Please raise your hands. About 30%. That is an Apache server vulnerability or misconfiguration that was there by default. Happened in 2021 around Christmas, if I recall correctly, or 2020 around Christmas. From once the vulnerability was found. So you can imagine every open application to the internet was pretty much exposed. From the time the vulnerability was found to the time it was exploited, it was roughly 6 days, which was very fast by then. Today, third of vulnerabilities already have exploits working with them, which means that you, as a defender, you have much more pressure to figure out whether I can patch a vulnerability, whether the patch even exists, but even more importantly, what is my security architecture? What is my security posture, how it should look like in order to have compensating controls, because you cannot handle vulnerability patching at the scale of machine speed, at least now, in the future maybe, but you need to be prepared of how to operate when this cannot be done, when patching cannot be done whenever you want it to be done. So the way we approach this situation, the way we work with our clients, is that we really or what I usually suggest is 5-step process. And typically when we start conversations with our clients, we see that the first question, the way people try to resolve this, is what my platform should be? What technology stack do I need to have? Right? So how do I resolve this issue, this challenge with technology? And the answer is that's maybe not the best question, the best method to start from. Because you have 3 big things: securing your AI adoption, being able to adapt to AI-driven threats, and to some, especially companies in mission-critical environments, figuring out what sovereignty means to me, right? Those are not 3 things that you can tackle at once. I would suggest pick one first. Take an elephant, eat an elephant one piece at a time. But once you have done that, give your teams time to learn on the topic that is the most important for you. As a leader sitting here today, if there's one thing that you can do as leaders, is to prioritize and give your teams time to learn. I've built my first agents about a month ago, and I must say it was an eye-opening experience. Experience that made me, having a semi-technical background, already today not almost non-technical background, it enables me to think, how should I protect my environment? It makes me to also challenge our teams. How would you do this? How would you do that? When a technical person, a security analyst, security engineer learns agentic AI, his or her thoughts will be, let's say, a magnitude times bigger, higher, and more needed for your organization. Because today, what I see, unfortunately, more and more is that people are looking for shortcuts. In agentic AI world, this does not exist. And the reason why, especially for agentic AI, this is so important is that you had Gen AI, the next iteration is agentic AI. The iteration after this will be agents communicating with each other across companies. And that is when those things go bad, then it becomes even more and more tedious for incident responders to detect and fix the situation. How many of you have heard about a Molt book? Molt book, no? I see about less than 10 hands. Please Google Molt book. It's a Reddit site, Reddit-like site, that is only for agents. Agents are deployed there. Humans are very welcome to observe, but agents freely talk with each other. They discuss religion. They even created religions there. But 30% of conversations are around exploiting another agent. Agents will be also weaponized on the adversary side to scale their efforts, and their ROI is very good. So they have all the incentives to go that path. This is why now it's maybe the best time for, as leaders, for you to give time for your teams to learn what is the art of the possible when it comes to sovereignty, what are the ways how you can secure your AI adoption and adapt to AI threats, because they would need to really put their hands to work to get that first-hand experience in order to have an opinion. Because once that opinion is there, then you can figure out, okay, what is our crown jewels? Now we understand what would be the more or less way to secure, more or less to proceed within your priority topic. And once you know your crown jewels, then you can define how it should be protected. Prevention, right? How do I prevent things from happening? How do I detect things? And how I respond and recover. And trust me, if it's a legacy application somewhere versus if it's an agent, those things will be very different. Those controls at the beginning will be very much the same. I bet a lot of it will be around identity governance and access. But the more closer you go to your crown jewels, the more different those processes, capabilities, technologies will be. And only then choose the platforms of choice. Don't start with platforms. If there's one key advice or two, is that prioritize, give your teams time to learn, and downstream, choose the platforms when you're ready. And to see how these prioritization, how it takes place in a mission-critical environment, I have the pleasure of introducing Uko Valtenberg on the stage to have a conversation. Let's give a big, big hand to Uko. Oh, thank you. Yeah. All right, Uko, allow me to introduce you first.
Go for it.
And welcome to the Cybersecurity Forum.
Thank you for inviting.
Uko Valtenberg. Uko is the Group Chief Information Security Officer of Eesti Energia, Estonia's largest energy company with operations across Nordics and Baltics. When an adversary comes for the power grid of the entire nation, it is actually Uko and his team who stands in their way. Uko is also a career officer. Uko served as a NATO liaison officer in Kabul, Afghanistan. He also commanded Estonian Cyber and Information Operations Center as a commander. And for over 6 years, he ran the NATO Cyber Range, the platform behind Locked Shields, the largest live fire exercise in the world, where he also led the Estonian and Georgian Blue Team in 2022. So the threats that people typically won't see coming, Uko has been finding and fighting them for 2 decades. Uko, it's an honor to have you here.
It's my pleasure to be here.
So let's get started.
Yep.
So I have 5 questions, and maybe we'll have some time even for questions from the audience. But the first question, very easy one to get started from. What are the military lessons that you have learned during your service and adopted in your civilian work?
It's not an easy question, to be honest. Military officer, the training and everything that we go through gives you a lot in that sense. I tend to think that military leadership is something that you really need in times of crisis. And the reason for that is quite simple in that sense. In military, we always assume that things won't work. So we always have the saying that your plans work until the first shot is done, and then you have to be able to adjust to the situation. And you're really trained in the military to act, make decisions, and operate integrated networks and situations. So we really cannot assume that what we see is going to be the same after, 15 minutes or so. And the same applies also for the servicemen in the military, that they're thoroughly trained. And the reason for that is that in times of crisis, we tend to lose our focus. So we have learned many things. We know, we know how math is done, but for some reason, every time there is a crisis, it's time pressure, anything else, people tend to forget everything that they have learned. So even math will get complex. But what military does, and does best, is that they drill the unit to do the same task over and over and over again, so that when stuff happens, it's more like a reaction, not anymore something that you have to think about. So that's also the reason why a large part of my team tends to be military background people. So they're really reactive, not waiting for something.
Yeah, we'll never forget. All plans fail upon first contact. Yeah, true. But then you're working in a very mission-critical environment, very important for the society, right? For a nation, multiple nations actually, given where you do business. How does sovereignty, is that addressed in your company?
Sovereignty in our sector or utility sector is quite important in that sense. There are 3 aspects of that. There is a data-related sovereignty. There is asset-related sovereignty, in that sense, third-party vendor control and stuff like that. And there is also the crisis, from the crisis point of view. So data-wise, it's easy where we have our critical data, because in energy sector, in today's energy market, everything depends on data. Data establishes how fast you can react to the market, how fast can you adjust. So you need to have the correct data available, and you need to be sure where the data is kept and who has access to that. From vendor point of view, we need to know who are our vendors. We need to know who provides the technology, how good they're with patching, if they're transparent in their technology development. We need to know how long they will survive in the market. So we build stuff that lasts up to 50 years. 25 plus 15, and we usually tend to prolong that a little bit more, like 10 to 20 years, depends on the technology. But we need to be sure that the vendor is there after 25, maybe 50 years. And after that, there is also the question of crisis management. Sovereignty also for us means that we have the company or the technology all the time, always available. And it's exceptionally important for now, where we saw in several occasions in Ukraine also, where US companies said that, I'm not going to name the company, everybody probably knows, you are not going to have service in this situation. And it was also, okay, if it's done to the adversary, okay. If it's done to the Western or not the adversary, it's not okay. But just the idea that somebody else, third company or third country, can switch off your services is unacceptable in the energy sector. Because my main focus is energy production, energy distribution, and sales. And those are critical, exceptionally, if you looked at, if you have minus 35 degrees, like we have in Finland and Estonia, our companies provide electricity and heating, and then somebody says, not today. No. So very important for us.
So it's more, I would then, based on your answer, if I would allude, it's more business-driven than actually compliance-driven for you.
Yeah. But the compliance is also a very important part there. So.
Of course, I understand. Thank you. It's actually very interesting. I think you're the only CISO that I have had the pleasure of speaking with over the past year that had 2 words in the same sentence, important and sales. Just joking.
No, but just to be honest in that sense, I cannot operate in a model where security is everything, and I kind of, hinder the sales or business side. I have to count in every decision I do, also the business side, because business is that part that keeps our company alive and makes my technology and my capability, enables my capability as such. So I have to be cautious about not hindering the business as such.
I think there's something to be learned here. The importance of business and understanding business as a security leader nowadays. If you think about 10 years back, I think we have seen CISOs that are more of a risk management oriented folks. And now, as we can see today, business is one of that thing in your toolbox that you need to at least address and understand as well.
One of my tasks is make sure that the business is able to do their stuff. So.
Cool. And then if you think about AI, right, as AI goes mainstream, the obvious question in Eesti Energia is, do you use AI to some degree?
Of course we do. We do use AI, and it's unavoidable in that sense. People are drawn to new technologies, and the leadership is drawn to new technologies. They see something they want to implement. It has always been like that. It doesn't really matter, is it AI or is it some other new tech or new tool, I don't know, in Microsoft's kind of portfolio and so on, they want to implement. And it's normal in that sense. Business always wants to utilize capabilities like that because salespeople are doing really good jobs selling that and saying that it will bring the happiness and will raise your revenues and everything else. It's clear. My job in that sense is to understand how, what, where, who, and how to enable that in our situation, what additional risks it brings on table. Not necessarily kind of block that. It's never an option in that sense.
Based on my experience, I see oftentimes the unfortunate to happen is that security is brought into those conversations, AI conversations, at the very last moment. How do you, as a leader, make sure that you're always part of those conversations, that you can really understand the risks and figure out how to tackle them in order to make sure that AI is adopted in a safe way?
I don't know if there is a safe adoption at the moment.
Least risky.
Least risky. That's better.
Yes.
So one thing is that I have to know my own business. I have to know what I'm doing, what is my responsibility, where are the company risks, what are risk thresholds. I have to know my tech stack, I have to know my people, and so on and so forth. And if you know everything, then you also understand when something new comes on board. You see that immediately. And it's my task to engage that to a certain degree, to ask around. So I would say in Estonian Energy, adoption-wise, we adopted, or in process, let's put it this way. But technology was already there in many ways. So I knew about AI much longer before it got commercial, to be honest. And when it got commercially very kind of popular, then I already used I like to use new technology. It's one of my jobs. For everything new that comes, I have to have my fingers in it. So I was, in that sense, aware. And I was, in the beginning, when ChatGPT and everything was brought alive, I immediately, or quite early in the process, understood that this will be something important. And the like-minded people were agreeing with me that this will have some shift, this will have some influence on overall business, how we do it today. And that's where I have to be, as a manager, also aware that people are going to use that. And then I have to understand where, when, why. And then you have to go look at your security posture, you have to understand your data situation and everything else, and then you can address the right question, ask the right questions and poke around. In Estonian Energy, we are trying now to avoid two extremes in many ways. Like, don't over control it, because this will mean that people will shift everything outside of your control. Shouldn't do that. And don't let AI anarchy happen in your company. Try to establish some kind of balance. Like, it's okay to use, but under these conditions, and so on. It's a tricky business in that sense.
If you may answer this, if you're willing to answer this, not necessary if you choose not to, but because of what you just mentioned, that you want to find that balance, not to cause AI anarchy or to cause this, let's say, mandatory evil security adoption, right? So don't use AI, and then people will use shadow AI instead. What are the core changes in your cyber resilience that you foresee as a result of AI adoption?
Result. There are many changes in your resilience. There are many. First of all, we need to establish AI governance. So that's something that we're working on at the moment, trying to establish. And also we kind of lined out what are the dependencies. So when we want to use AI from top to bottom, which actually means that integration, data, you have to establish the data management, you have to clean the data, you have to delete not needed data, you have to establish access and write controls, and you have to kind of tighten up a little bit more than usual. So I'm not really afraid about AI as an augmentation tool for regular people, like trying to do a document or whatever. I'm more worried about agentic AI. And the agentic AI is something that, from security perspective, if you don't have your identity and right and access management in place, and you give full access or full rights to the agentic AI, if something goes wrong, it goes wrong really badly. And there's good examples already happened over the past years, like CrowdStrike event, where CrowdStrike, it's not AI related, but just to give you the scope, that when CrowdStrike had an event where the system went sour and all the services were down because of it. So agentic AI can do the same, but much faster even. And that's what worries me, that we really don't have at the moment good monitoring capability and good digital identity measures in place to be ready for agentic in that manner. We test around, yes, we play around. I have used scripts, automation. I know automating means everything. In security, we have the SOAR capability, which we use because attacks events happen so fast that we have to automate. There is no way around it. We just are, as security teams, even if you're 25, 30 people, we are not able to cope with the speed. And you need to have certain, automation. Agentic and AI brings deeper automation, but it also brings lots of complexity. The question is, how well do we really understand the black box? So you can say that for most of us, AI is magic. We don't really know how it works, but it works. It delivers. It makes beautiful pictures, beautiful haikus, sounds plausible in every way. But if I see, for example, a person who does medical evaluation using AI and has no medical background, you see where I'm going with that. He has no ways of checking if the data or the output given to him is valid or not. And that worries me most. And in agentic-wise, where human is not so much anymore in loop, and you said they're trying to exploit each other, if I, as a person, give you a paper about something that I don't know exactly, that's one thing. That's slow. When agentic AI tries to PS each other, that happens not in days, that happens in milliseconds or microseconds. And if something goes sour there, the question is, when are we going to be aware that something happened? Is it too late at that point when we get the realization that something went bad? And are we able to save something? Those are the questions that bother me most.
Are you letting your team to play around to learn?
Yeah, there is no way around it because everybody does. So we are kind of pushed to that direction. So even if we have trust issues with AI a little bit, as the full company has already, I'm sure everyone already has here, we had full hands. So I can say that probably in our company also everybody uses in some or another form AI already. We have to. There's no way around that. And we have to understand how it works. We have to understand what are its weaknesses, what are its related risks, and so on. So learning is, for security, learning in overall is something that you have to do on a daily basis.
Thank you. And then as we are still discussing AI, we see more and more AI being used on the adversarial side. Started from crafting great phishing emails to doing reconnaissance or helping in reconnaissance. And now more and more we see fully automated exploit chains, chained attacks done by scripts using AI, which of course then means that everything will happen faster, right? Sometimes vulnerabilities will be used that are just being discovered in worst case scenarios. So what should, in your opinion, security leaders prioritize when it comes to now this shifting in threat landscape? And what are the core capabilities that you think matters today when we think about AI-driven attacks?
The first thing that comes to my mind, and that's what we see also in attack trends, is identity. Identity is the weakest link at the moment that we have to kind of defend. And the AI, because we people, we are different in that sense. We have different level of expertise and knowledge and experience. And AI as a technology has evolved like exponentially, really fast. Just imagine that. A couple of years ago, we just talked to it and had like windows that were typing in questions and answers came out. Now we are able to talk an avatar who looks exactly like a person, is mimicking the facial expression, everything. And we are, as humans, we are in a very bad situation in that sense. We are not really good at distinguishing AIs from or artificial from real person anymore. And it gets worse over the years, also voice-wise. So AI augmented attacks are something that we as people are not able to cope with. And that's normal because we haven't really evolved like AI exponentially. We're still the same as we used to be roughly like 5,000 years or 10,000 years ago. And our cognitive capabilities, yes, we have technology, but in general, haven't really evolved as much as that. AI, again, is a wholly different beast. It keeps evolving and we keep investing in it. And we're trying to use it in situations where we want it to mimic us or mimic our behavior. But on top of that, or to be correct, under that layer, there's lots of smartness, lots of things that we don't understand. It gives us the expression, talks to us, but the reasoning behind that we don't know. It has many data points to read from, and it can give you the perfect answer in any situation. And we already know that it tries to please us in every situation. We have to tell it, team elephant or be aggressive against me, or otherwise it will try to please you in every situation, and it will lie, and it will hallucinate. We know that, and that's the biggest issue. We as people, persons, are not able to differentiate anymore. We are not controlling the technology. We are in the verge where technology starts to control us. And that's, for me, quite dangerous.
And as a defender, do you see that in security operations, is it hardcore automation because the attacks happen faster, they're fully more and more automated, or do you see agentic AI being used in security operations? Which one would you think in 2 years would be more prevalent? Automating yourself, writing your own automation, your own scripts, your own SOAR rules, or having agents working for you?
We probably need to augment our capability with AI. There is no way around that. At the moment, what we see, for example, the hybrid malware that AI is able to change on a run, and we're talking about seconds or milliseconds in that. It's able to adapt in different situations. We are not. Yeah. And we need some technology aids to help us. Otherwise, we will lose the fight. And I have to say that none of the threat actors will tell. You will not know if they have some new gizmo or some new toy in their hands. You will only see the effects when you're attacked. When the attack is successful, then you will see. People have an idea that you can, because you have a CM and you have the tooling and the XDRs and everything else, that you're able to anticipate. No, not really. Those tools work on certain situations, but the real reality is that adversaries are always trying to circumvent all your tooling, and that's their main goal, and to successfully attack you. And now they have AI in their side. I'm pretty much sure that we are, as people, not able to operate SOCs very efficiently without AI augmentation.
Thank you. And my last question, which is very selfish, but you are our public reference. We've been working together. What made you to choose SoftwareOne, back then Crayon, nowadays SoftwareOne, over everyone else, because you had the chance of choosing pretty much anyone you wanted?
It's not so dramatic in that sense. Yeah. When we choose someone or some vendor, we don't really choose vendors. We never look at vendors like that. We have an issue, we have a new system or new kind of service, and if you bring something new on, you don't have people who are trained, usually. You don't have enough people, or you don't know exactly the integration level, you don't know how to adjust your architecture. If it's so new, and it's very kind of tight and tense in that sense, the technology-wise, for example, Microsoft, adopting Microsoft in very kind of, up and down and everywhere, it means that a company as big as ours, in order to do it fully ourselves, we need to start to hire, we need to start to train, we need to start to adapt our architecture, everything. For a company with our size, it's not possible to do the shift like that. You cannot, and you cannot hire in a day like 100 new people, and you cannot expect them to be operationally capable. It takes roughly 6 months time when a new hire comes to that level that he knows where he is, what he needs to do, and it's just time, people, and knowledge. So we were looking for a company who were able to provide us with expertise, was transparent in communication, of course, that's very important for us, was able to assess our situation, was able to provide a solution on top of our situation, and was able to provide expertise, I have told, but also consultants in that sense, where, what, when, and in some technologies you need to understand the cost relations and stuff like that. So we kind of put that up. We had several companies that we assessed, and good for Crayon or your company that you were chosen basically through those criteria.
All right, thank you. That's pretty much what we had today. Do we have any questions from the audience? I see we have 3 minutes left. I think we can take one question if we have one.
Definitely, but I have to be on stage to ask the question. For you, actually, it's quite a general question, but interesting because you want to know how to keep balance between introducing this innovation and security when you're moving fast. How to keep the balance.
The
Do you have a
reality,
gas and brake, Uko, somehow? Or
I'm
what
leaving
is
you with
it?
this
Yeah,
question.
thank you.
if you drive stick, you know how it's done.
Yeah.
Basically, it's like you have the touch, and every company is different. You can use the car analogy in that sense. The cars are not alike. Cars are different, and you have to get the feel for that. That's the right word. Every company is different. Every utilities company is different. Exception, I would say, especially utilities companies are not alike, but very different companies, different setups. Finding the balance means that you understand your company, you understand the business, and then you play around. It happens with new technology that it's adopted faster than the security can be on board. It's very typical in that sense. But it's the question, how fast can I catch up? That's the question.
And how do you, is it by making yourselves available, working closely with business, or?
Yeah.
So that's the thing, that's how you keep the pulse on the finger, figure out where to push some brakes, where to add some gas.
Trying to be as close to business as possible. That's the key, basically.
Thank you, Uko. On that note, really thank you so much. Thank you everyone for listening.
So once again, as you see, our speakers are willing to answer your questions, so ask them. Once again, thank you very much, Alexander Värä and Uko Valtenberg. Give them a big round of applause. I hope they've inspired you, definitely, through this talk. I'm not going to be summing up anything. I hope you're doing your notes, definitely. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to bring you now, we're going to go to the next keynote speaker, and I want to bring you now to September 2025. Maybe some of you remember if you were flying through Brussels, Belgium, was it, Belgium, Brussels, yes, Berlin, Dublin as well. And some of you might have experienced queues, delays, flight cancellations, and it was the exact time when there was a ransomware of Collins Aerospace. VMUs, and we all felt it, at least those who are traveling. And why am I talking about this? Because this is just one example how threat actors can actually use cyber attacks to disrupt infrastructure across borders. So the oncoming keynote will explore how one exposed digital dependency can disrupt these critical infrastructures, maybe like airports, exactly across borders. And he will highlight practical steps how to reduce the attack surface and how to build resilience and keep it. So all this is coming from his knowledge, and maybe you've already read 35 books that he's an author of. He's a professor at the University of Dallas, and he has over 20 years of experience at Microsoft. So great expert to learn from. Please welcome warmly Principal PM Manager at Microsoft Threat Protection and CXE Team Microsoft, Yuri Diogenes. Welcome.
Thank you. Is the mic working? Yes, it is. Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, the previous speakers. Great discussion. I really love the previous presentation because it touched some of the things that I'm going to cover here as well. As she said, I've been at Microsoft for the past 20 years, working the product team for Defender for Cloud, actually. And I also professor at the University of Texas in Dallas, where I came from. I'm originally from Brazil, but I've been living in Texas for the past 23 years. And today's presentation is a big title. It's a big title, but it is important because we are putting two things together: the current threat landscape, as well as the importance of exposure. So one of the things that was said by the president of SoftwareOne in the beginning of the event today is that cybersecurity is not a technical subject anymore. It is taught and it is discussed in the board And this is so true. And I go even beyond that. As a matter of fact, cybersecurity became this geopolitical element because every time that we have a geopolitical tension, there is also a little bit of cyber involved on that. If you go back to 2022 when the war with Russia and Ukraine started, and you start tracking down, because we did track down the whole thing in the first year to understand what was happening, there was always elements of nation-state threat actors doing cyber attacks against Ukraine prior to military attacks taking place. So it was almost like a follow-up. You first have a cyber attack against the infrastructure, and then you have military reaction. Very well coordinated by nation-state threat actors with the military as well. So this is a trend. We also saw this during COVID times. I can't believe that has been 6 years already since COVID. But yes, during COVID, there was a spike in March 2022 of nation-state threat actors and threat actors in general doing phishing mail with the coronavirus. There was a lot of uncertainty at that time, so they took advantage of that and started exploiting that uncertainty. So the cyberspace, it mirrors the geopolitical, and we have to understand that. This is super important because in order to improve our defense, we need to start using threat intelligence to improve our cyber defense. And threat intelligence is really directly related with the geopolitical aspect that is happening. And this is primordial for the moment that we all live in. With AI and everything, you have to understand your adversaries, what they are doing, and how you should react to that. Ideally, not only react, ideally be very well proactive. And when we talk about this growth of cyber threats and nation-state threat actors, I'm going to bring some data from Mediant here that shows that 1 in 3 nation-state threat actors are probing already critical infrastructure. And this is very alarming. Well, just recently in the US, we had Iranian threat actors that affect Los Angeles critical infrastructure and disrupt some of the buses and everything. So this was a small example of what can happen when nation-state threat actors go against critical infrastructures. Okay, other threat actors also from Iran try to probe SCADA and OT systems in US. So this geopolitical, because of the war, it starts to lead also to the cyberspace. And then suddenly you and your company are affected by a problem that's not even yours. But if you are not aware about what's happening in the world and from the geopolitical standpoint, you may not be prepared to defend. That's why you have to be super aware about those things and start leveraging threat intelligence in your favor. This data here is from Microsoft Threat Intelligence Report. 200% of the attacks related to nation-state threat actors growth since 2020, which is a big number as well. So again, I'm starting this presentation talking about nation-state threat actors because there is a really misunderstanding about those nation-state threat actors. A lot of people think that nation-state threat actors, they are going against government only, and that's not true. As a matter of fact, if you look to the 3 main nation-state threat actors that we track, Blizzard from Russia, Sandstorm from Iran, and Typhoon from China, and if you look to the top 3 targets, they are not only government. They are government, yes, government is there, but there's IT and education. Okay, IT and education. Well, why IT? Well, IT is probably the most effective one because of supply chain. So if you think about nation-state threat actors that really want to expand their reach at scale, it's much easier for them to attack and compromise the little guy. The company that is just providing the network interface or the network card or the driver, very little thing that can expand to other industries. So yes, they will go after that little guy. And you have to be aware of the supply chain when you are consuming your hardware, your equipments and everything, because most of the time this comes from hardware. Although SolarWinds was a great proof that it can also compromise software companies as well. So supply chain attack that happens with SolarWinds. So IT is a big one, target for nation-state threat actors. Education also is a big one. If you think about education, is more about influence, right? Planting misinformation, trying to create chaos, because that's also how it works. Planting the chaos in a specific region to lead to other types of attacks. So everything comes together. It's not only about only ransomware. No, no, no. It's much more than that. It's much broader than that. Instilling the chaos is also part of the nation-state threat actors' agenda. And if we look to this regional sample of nation-state threat actor activities, you will see that there are a lot of activities across the globe, and even in regions that you may not thinking, right? I mean, as I said, I'm originally from Brazil, and when I see Brazil on this list, people say, oh, nothing happens in Brazil. It's just football, carnival, samba, it's all happy. There's not, right? It's not really like that. There is a lot of things going on in terms of nation-state threat actors probing systems in Brazil. In Europe, as you can see, Ukraine is number one. It makes total sense. The war is still going on, and they still being severely attacked by other nation-state threat actors. U.S., of course, number one in the Americas because of the wars. This data is actually from November 2025. It's part of our digital defense reports that you can download, and there is the whole reading of the nation-state threat actors there. But this is a good sample for you to understand that nation-state threat actors, they are doing business across the globe. And you need to be aware as a business owner, as a CEO, as a leader, what is happening across the globe and how this will affect your industry and how your company may be affected by that. Again, going back to the whole threat intelligence capability. And since we cannot have one presentation without talking about AI, one data that is very important to mention here is about how nation-state threat actors are starting to utilize AI during their attacks. In the presentation, it was talk about mythos and everything. Look, all this is very important, but if you look at the second diagram, that to me is even more alarming than the first one, because the first one is a growth, and it makes total sense that the growth is starting in 2024 and is starting to peak even more. The growth of usage of AI to craft phishing emails, to create campaigns, to develop exploits, it makes sense. Threat actors are ramping up in AI and using it to do reconnaissance and things like that. But the second diagram to me is even more alarming because it's about the level of sophistication. And if you're looking at a scale of 0 to 10, we are not even on 5, sort of 5. So there is a lot of room to grow in terms of sophistication. We are, not we, but the threat actors did not even scratch the surface of the potential that AI can offer in terms of sophistication. That's alarming, because if the campaigns that they are using with AI are just scratching the surface, that means that we have a lot of challenge ahead of us in terms of how to detect those attacks, how to respond faster, how to identify those things, right? It's just the beginning of the journey for them as threat actors and for us defenders as well. So we have to be on top of that. So this leads us to one important information about exposure, which is the main point here. It's really hard to keep all the systems up to date in terms of exposure. And exposure is much more than just vulnerabilities, right? If we look to the center of this, there are 830,000 exposures. And exposure is not only CVEs. Oh, there is a new vulnerability, high severity, I need to patch. That's one data. There are more than that. It's misconfiguration, is exposure. What really leads to an exposure, privilege identities that are provisioning and are weak in your system. So there are other artifacts that contribute with the exposure. And in the world that we live, assets is not only device. We have to protect every single asset that goes into your communication. Because if you think about how threat actors exploit systems nowadays, mainly in a cloud environment, they pivot between one cloud and another. We've seen this before, where threat actors, they started their campaign in Azure and they move laterally to AWS as long as there is a connection. So the lateral movement is not only between devices anymore. It is between assets, between one VM and one storage account, and then pivot to another cloud. And that's how we need to look at things, is to understand what are the potential attack paths that we have in your environment. And the last one, which is probably the most alarming one, and something that we've been talking about for years now, is the average time to reduce exposure. Again, throughout the years, we were tackling this more on vulnerability, but the reality is vulnerability is not enough nowadays. We have to think about exposure, and I'll explain more about exposure. But the point is, it takes 58 days to reduce exposure, and it takes only 5 days to exploit vulnerabilities. Okay, so the math is not in our favor. We need to do something about that. And one of the reasons why it's so challenging to do something about that is because throughout the years, the industry was conditioned to work in silos. Okay, that's one reality across the globe. The industry in general was conditioned to work in different silos. Oh, I want the best in breed for email. I want the best EDR solution, the best of this, the best of that. That was the mindset, and still is in some companies. I want the best of each solution, because that gives the CISO or the company in general the sense that they are investing on the right thing. The problem is, when you have the best in breed, you have silos. What are those silos? They don't talk with each other. The data, the insights that are available on the EDR platform are not exchanged with the identity, are not exchanged with the data. So it creates gaps. And what happens when it creates gaps? Well, threat actors will exploit, because they think in graph. They think how they can get to point A to point B. It doesn't matter what it is, the solution. They look in this graph, how can I move laterally? And when you work in silos, you create gaps in between solutions, because there is no exchange of information across these solutions. So for the threat actors, it's kind of easy to say, okay, my campaign will be about dropping a phishing email. From that, I'm going to exploit an endpoint, escalate privilege on the identity, and get to the data. That is my important point. And from the data, I can pivot to other workloads as well. How this can happen if I'm using the best in breed for EDR? Well, because there were areas that the EDR threat detection does not cover. And the information that was collected by the email protection was not exchanged with the EDR and vice versa. So it creates those gaps. So the only way to overcome this challenge is to have a unified solution. Either you have a unified solution, or you get all the insights from those individual silos and feed into one single platform, into one single unified exposure management platform. Right? That's another solution as well, because some companies, they say, oh, no, I want to keep my investment in best in breed, but I want to feed all the data into a unified exposure management solution so that I can see across those silos what are the signals that can help me to prioritize, because it's all about prioritization. When you don't understand what to protect, it makes it really hard for you to prioritize. And threat actors, they love that, because it expands the attack surface for them. It's a great way for them to say, hey, this company, they are overloaded with recommendations, with secure recommendations. They don't even know how to prioritize what is important to them. I think that one of the things that we did over the years at Microsoft was to evangelize the secure score with the Defender for Cloud. And by the way, who is using Defender for Cloud here? Hey, raise your hands. How many people? Now, secure score. Have you heard about secure score? Okay, so secure score is a concept to at least give you a North Star in terms of secure posture. I've been working with Defender for Cloud for the past 11 years because it was created back in 2015. I was a member of the original team. It was called Azure Security Center, and then later on became Defender for Cloud. But throughout those 11 years, I've probably seen the security score reach 100% in probably 3 or 4 companies across the globe. Reach 100%. And it was there for probably only 1 day. And then it dropped again, right? Which was super interesting because when it reached, people took picture and it was all happy about. Next day it was back to 90. And they were like, what happened? Well, it's the other problem that we deal with, which is governance. Companies, they need to start thinking about deploy and provision workloads secure by default. Why are you going to provision a storage account that's widely open? You don't want to do that, right? So that's another problem. So here's some attack paths, some data from our Microsoft Secure Exposure Management, where we have more than 100,000 organizations representing this. That's a huge number. If you think about 90% of the organization are exposed to at least one attack path. That's huge, okay? You have to take care of those attack paths. And to take care of those attack paths, you have to move on from reactive to preemptive. A lot of companies are still working in reactive mode, okay? And when they work in reactive mode, they really don't know what to prioritize, and they prioritize the wrong things. Working in proactive mode, you anticipate potential attacks. You now are working in risk factors. You understand the risks, and you can address the risk based on the exposure. Because it's not only high, medium, and low anymore. Oh, I have this high vulnerability here, but this asset is protected by multiple layers, and there is no way for lateral movement to get to this asset. So the exposure is low. The vulnerability is high, exposure low. Okay, I'm not going to prioritize this now. I'm going to work on other things. So you have to measure the exposure factor. That's going to increase your risk. Okay, that's the whole point. Of course, we are moving on to a preemptive mode. That's the whole vision, is moving preemptive mode where we're going to have AI helping to expedite autonomously with human revision all the secure recommendations so that you can gain time and also help with prioritization. But some companies are still working on proactive. Unfortunately, there are a lot of companies working in reactive mode. Okay, as I mentioned, the exposure factor is important because it's not only about CVE, it's about all these other factors: unnecessary open ports, public information available, data sets that are not protected, and so on. So all those things together are put in place for you to measure the risk factor and the exposure of your assets. So the strategy that is happening is Gartner created the C10. This is not Microsoft. This is an industry standard called C10. It's a program. It's not a piece of software. You're not going to say, oh, where do I buy this C10? No, this is a program. You can learn more about this on Gartner. But basically, it has 5 phases where you are going to better understand the scope and your objectives. You are going to do the discoverability because you cannot protect what you don't know where it exists. And then you have to prioritize, validate the solution, and then mobilize, which is actually deploying the solution. So that's the C10 life cycle. You're going to start working on that. The C10 will help to also create a schema where you have not only the SOC, because that's the other thing that I see when I talk with customers across the globe. They invest a lot on SOC. It's about, oh, I want to empower my SOC analysts with more alerts. That's good, but this is also almost like saying, I'm going to put alarms in all these facilities, but I'm going to leave all the doors open. What is the point? You have to do the homework, and the homework is reducing exposure. You have to enhance your security posture. That way, less alerts goes to the SOC. So it's not only about empowering the SOC, it's about creating the ROC, the Risk Operations Center. It's a new acronym here, ROC. So you are going to create these risk operations centers to deal with exposure and reduce the number of alerts that goes to the SOC. That way, you are being proactive. You are not waiting to get compromised and then do something, because that's what SOC is doing, is reacting, it's incident response all the time. And it's really hard to expedite everything. So with that, I want basically 3 major call to action from this presentation today. The first one is your exposure is much more than just posture of your assets. Understand the exposure factor, okay? If you are a Microsoft customer, go to the Defender portal, and there you're gonna see exposure management. That is the MSEN, Microsoft Secure Exposure Management. Take a look on that. That will show your exposure factor, okay? Adopt an attacker viewpoint. Understand what you prioritize. Make sure that you have this attacker mindset and show that you are feeding your team with threat intelligence. And last but not least, don't just defend. Continue to understand the landscape, the challenge, and make sure that you are building an infrastructure that you react faster, okay? And anticipate everything in a much smarter way. Thank you very much.
Once again, thank you, Yuri, for that insight. I hope you are still thinking about the questions, because we are collecting them and we're going to be asking them if you write them, also online or live, or you can ask your questions directly over coffee later and talk to Yuri. That's another great opportunity. We're going on. We still have 2 more speakers before our break. And you've heard digital sovereignty that was thrown here on the stage many times. So most of us probably have once at least thought in our lives, where is our data? Who has access to it? That's quite important. And also, at the same time, we're thinking, okay, if our data is in the cloud, how much operational autonomy do we actually have over it? So talking of also data resiliency, this is something that the next speaker will be tackling, and we'll be discussing what is the best place for our data. That's the question. And he'll probably also discuss how to compromise the governmental regulations, as you know, that we have, and the digital sovereignty, because there's a little bit of tension over there. He'll tell you how to also design some cloud and digital systems that give us verifiable control and autonomy over our data. So, ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together, this time for Principal Security Leader at Amazon Web Services, AWS, Yuecel Karabulut.
Thanks so much. Thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry.
All good. It's wonderful to be in Prague. I would like to start my talk with a confession. I'm going to confess something I haven't shared publicly before. I'm obsessed with the movie The Godfather. I love all these lights. Show your hands if you love the movie Godfather. Okay. And show hands if you watched it more than 30 times. Oh, we should chat later. So, you know, I love this movie because, not because only amazing acting and the story, the music. I love the iconic tunes in this movie. And in music, the notes that matter most are the notes you barely hear. Any musicians here? Any musicians here? Okay. So the master musicians, amazing musicians, know where to put these, notes that are barely played or you don't hear them sometimes. And we call them ghost notes. You take out, pick up any song you love, take these ghost notes away from this music. It's gonna sound flat, dry, boring. They really matter. They matter most. In cybersecurity, we tend to do the opposite as a community. Some organizations struggle in cybersecurity, others do better, and we tend to do the opposite, which means, sometimes instead of focusing on what really drives risk, we just focus on what is visible, what is on the headlines, what is being maybe offered on RSA exhibition halls, etc. And that creates, of course, blind spots. And I tell you, organizations who really, really do well in cybersecurity, they nail the basics. They focus on the fundamentals. They are not distracted. Of course, they watch what's going on. And I tell you, this is going to be even more important in the era of mythos and AI. In fact, the Cloud Security Alliance last month published a paper, I don't know, 200 pages or something like this. And they talk about how to create mythos-ready cybersecurity programs, organizations. And one of their proposals is nail the basics. Nail the basics, right? Okay, so, and as you know, title says I'm going to talk about sovereignty, but the reason why I started talking about the nail the basics and fundamentals is when I just watch the discussions around digital sovereignty. Of course, most the governments, regulators, they love it. CISOs have different opinions about that. And I just want to clarify that, one is about autonomy, one is about control and jurisdiction, another one is about protecting from threats. And this means you can have strong sovereignty, whether it is your on-prem environment or maybe cloud in your country, etc., and with weak security or vice versa. Ideally, if you want to make legal teams and security teams happy at the same time, you should have a strong, digital sovereignty at the same time, strong security posture. But again, there is no sovereignty without foundational security, without the basics. Why? Because if the purpose is to control who can access your data, you shouldn't just think about this in the context of operator access. Right? What about threat actors? They don't care about where your data is. Whether you are running on a fully autonomous, operationally autonomous cloud or on your on-prem or in your basement, they don't care about where your data is. Right? The previous presentations, in particular, I think Yuri showed one slide I really liked. It was like attack surface beyond CVEs. I have seen a couple of things there I really liked, which is stolen credentials, weak configuration. That slide is just talking about the foundations, things that are really important and beyond CVEs. Now, my last slide about security, then we will move to sovereignty. All right? So anyone running any workloads on the cloud, doesn't matter whether it is AWS or not. Maybe 20%. What do the rest do? On-prem. Okay. So maybe you will do more in the cloud. Maybe you will do more in the cloud. I just wanted to bring these three things that are really key, because when we talk about foundations, fundamentals, attackers love low-hanging fruits, whether they are state nations or not. Even they love low-hanging fruits. They don't spend billions of dollars to breach into the hypervisor and then own the VM, etc., right? You probably heard about this VM escape, side channel attacks, all these super interesting attack vectors. One of the key takeaways of this talk should be, take care of your API keys, because cloud is all about APIs, and do not use long-term access keys, never use the root user for your daily operations, and of course, when you look at Cloud IAM, you can use Cloud IAM to enable access for your users, for your machines, or for your agents. But you can also use controls to constrain, to put a sandbox around this cloud. Like, for example, you can define a policy and say, no one in my organization will be able to create a virtual machine outside this particular cloud region. If you have it, no administrator, no developer in your organization can override them. So if you are a CISO, if you are a security leader in this room, and if you are using cloud or you plan to use cloud, take advantage of these governance policies, governance controls. All right, now, let's talk about digital sovereignty. When we talk to customers about digital sovereignty, this is how they define it. It has two parts. Data sovereignty, I believe Uko already talked about this a bit, and operational sovereignty. Right? The first one is, okay, data residency. Where is my data? In which region, in which country, etc. Operator access restriction. Right? If you run workloads on any cloud, you might be worried about, operators may access my data. And if these two things are met, the requirements, then you have data sovereignty. The last two ones, resiliency, because one of the promises of cloud is resiliency, right? You want to have highly available systems, resilient systems. Again, Uko talked about this, because he said, we produce energy, we distribute energy, we sell, etc. And he highlighted the importance of availability. I loved it because he highlighted this as part of his definition of sovereignty. Last but not least, independence and transparency. We will talk a bit more about this. But look, digital sovereignty is not a feature, it's not a capability. You cannot just take a cloud and say, oh yeah, let's make this digital sovereign. Let's add this layer, this feature, this capability. This is not how it works, right? And ideally, you want to use a cloud platform that is sovereign by design. What do I mean with this? Sovereign by design. The security professionals love this term, secure by design. But there's also sovereign by design. Let me elaborate on this. We say AWS is actually sovereign by design. Why? We have, it's a global infrastructure. We have lots of regions, and you decide as a customer, which region you want to use for your data. And this data stays there. Cloud operator, cloud vendor cannot move the data from A to B. So you have the control of location of your data. And of course, operator access. Anyone using VMware or similar virtualization technologies in on-prem environment? Most of you. I used to run security product management for VMware for a couple of years. So I know ESXi really well. One of the best hypervisors any engineering group has ever created. But the classical hypervisors has a problem, which is they run on a server, and then you have virtual machines from different business units. But then there is one powerful person in that environment, your virtualization architect or virtualization admin. He has keys to the kingdom. He has to do something with the hypervisor, with full privileges. This means he has the possibility to access the virtual machines, virtual machine disk files, etc., etc. So basically, when you run virtualization today in your on-prem environment, you have a trust-based system. You trust your administrator. In many cases, when I had meetings with customers and when I brought these virtualization teams together with the security teams, there was always a tension, lots of dynamics in the room, I tell you. Because the VMware people, you know, they have a fortress and they have a way of running their operations with their own security practices. Not every CISO loved and liked what they heard, right? But AWS also started with classical virtualization. I must say virtualization is one of these technologies that made cloud possible, actually. But around 2017, you know, we raised the bar and invented our own, you know, hypervisor and virtualization system called Nitro system, okay? And this means the biggest part of the virtualization functionality, network virtualization, storage virtualization, etc., are offloaded to separate physical cards. And you know, you can only interact with this environment through some APIs, authenticated, authorized APIs. It's not that someone can just go and log in and then do an SSH to a box and then access the virtual machines. That era is over. If you haven't heard about it, you heard about it now. AWS Nitro system. Anyway, and of course, if you want to encrypt your data in the cloud, you can encrypt it. You can bring your own keys. You can use, you know, vendor managed keys, etc. But these keys are stored in HSM-backed key management environments. This means once these keys are there, they cannot be extracted. There is no way anyone can extract. If you are using today HSMs, you already know most of them are probably FIPS certified. You cannot extract, you cannot export encryption keys. And of course, if you want to control the root of trust, you can say, you know what, we don't trust the cloud KMS and we want to control the root of trust in our on-prem environment. You can also do it using so-called external key store. So now, okay, AWS is a global infrastructure, right? We have multiple regions, over 30 regions, and every region is comprised of 3 availability zones, where an availability zone is multiple data centers. It's a massive global infrastructure, okay? And again, back to the Nitro system, this infrastructure, all these EC2 instances, virtual machines, are powered by the so-called Nitro system, which makes it impossible, you know, an operator to access any customer data and assets. And of course, it has to be verifiable. If you know this company, NCC Group, maybe some of you have already worked with them. So, you know, we invited them and asked them, can you come and verify our claims? Because we want that customers have independent, you know, verification. And they published this report and said, as a matter of design, NCC Group found no gaps in the Nitro system that will compromise the security claims Amazon is making. It is worth reading. Anyway, now, all these regions, because of these all capabilities I talked about, because of the Nitro system, because of the other capabilities that make AWS a sovereign by design, but some European customers said we want to have an operationally autonomous cloud. Why? Well, ask the regulators, ask the you know, legal teams and governments. And have you heard of European sovereign cloud? Amazon last year. Anyone heard about European sovereign cloud? Just only a few people. Okay, last year we opened a new region. It's called European Sovereign Cloud. It's in Brandenburg in Berlin, near Berlin. It is you know, fully featured. It's the same technology-wise. It's the same cloud. All the services are the same. Infrastructure is the same. But there are a couple of things that are different. And this is what regulators and governments and regulated customers appreciate. Right? Let's talk about them. So basically, it is the same leading you know, infrastructure and sovereign by design, but then when I say operational autonomy, I really mean that the people, the humans who operate the cloud environment, they are all EU citizens. I'm not sure whether this makes something more secure or less secure, but regulators and government customers regulated customers are happy about that. And this is what we gave to them. So basically, an independent infrastructure operated by AWS employees, EU residents located in the EU, but there is also some enhanced data residency capabilities. Let me talk about what these things are. First of all, again, all these operations, customer service, day-to-day operations, they are all done by EU resident AWS employees. This means there is no like a DevOps engineer, accessing an environment and doing some configurations from the US or from other parts of the world. It is fully autonomous, okay? And here's the enhanced data residency part. So not all AWS services are created equally, right? We have zonal services, we have regional services, and we also have some global services. This means, data plane and control plane are, in different places. Like, for example, if you look at usage or IAM, IAM is in a traditional infrastructure we have, in our existing regions. IAM is a global service. That's intentional, by the way. But European Sovereign Cloud has its own IAM, has its own usage service, and also other capabilities. Basically, it is fully independent of all other regions, and this is what customers love. All right. So, and of course, it has its own governance framework, and with independent advisors, etc. Like German BSI is super about it, and all these efforts, some multi-billion-dollar effort, have been achieved in collaboration with government agencies. All right. So, whether you run your workloads on European Sovereign Cloud or not, I'm not sure what you value more. I personally value security foundation and security. But of course, we live in a world where we are concerned about other nations, etc. And this gives a peace of mind to customers who really want to run their workloads on a fully independent cloud. But what matters most, again, is nailing the basics and security foundations. Security foundations first, and then sovereignty second. That's my personal opinion. Thanks so much. Happy to take some questions.
Yuecel, stay for a second.
Yes.
We got some questions. We're gonna just tackle one. The rest during coffee break. I think you'll just take them. Okay, I'll take them more generalized because there are very specific ones that you asked. I'm sure that Yuecel will tackle them later. What new capabilities, skills, and operating models will defenders need in order to keep peace with AI-assisted offensive security? That's a long one. That's a long one. I can share. That's why I was even reading it from you.
What new capabilities, skills, and operating models will defenders need in order to keep peace with AI-assisted offensive security? Well,
you can choose. That's a discussion-long answer.
Yeah, no, I mean, look, really, the security foundations. There is this story of. Have you heard of street light effect story? A man is looking for his keys, car keys, under a street lamp, and the policeman is walking by and asking, "Are you looking for something, sir?" And then he's like, "Yeah, I lost my car keys." But the man looks a bit drunk, and the police asks him again, "Have you lost them here?" He says, "No, over there in the dark corner, but the light is better here." So, if you don't do this, if you don't run security like this, based on headlines, etc., really, if you focus on foundations, and again, I'm happy to see the Cloud Security Alliance's Mythos Ready paper also talks about that. So we need to nail the basics, credentials, API keys, etc. That's my recommendation.
Okay, let's take one more specific. Why not? You can I'll share it with you so it's easier. I'll read it aloud so everybody hears. With the emergence of advanced AI systems such as Mythos that we've heard before, which can significantly accelerate vulnerability discovery and exploitation, How do you expect the role of blue teams to evolve?
Well, you have no other choice. You have to use AI-powered tools. No other choice. And this is the only way, we can catch up. Because when you hear what's going on with Mythos and what Mythos can do, I believe there was a blog published by Cloudflare, and they shared their experience with Mythos. And what surprised me and what also made me unhappy was that the ability to chain low impact vulnerabilities, which we will ignore usually, because we love these high critical, medium critical vulnerabilities. We focus on them. The ability to chain these low priority vulnerabilities and create attack paths automatically, this is very powerful. And the best we can do right now is really just use AI-powered tools for whether it is for your pen testing, whether it is for your secure code development or design level. If you heard of AWS Security Agent, if you haven't heard about it, I'm not saying this just for the sake of marketing. Have a look at it. AWS Security Agent, what you can do with it to really enhance your secure software development, pen testing, the entire life cycle. So have a look at it, and that's the answer. We have to use AI to defend better.
Perfect. Right. Thank you very much. Next questions, guys, over coffee. Once again, Yuecel Karabulut from AWS. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Thanks.
So we're happy you're alive with questions. Why not? Last but not least, now presentation and talk before our coffee break. And as we know, attackers, as they're using AI, they are moving faster. So we have to defend and react faster. And our next speaker will tackle current attack trends focused on AI and agentic tooling. And he'll provide us with some insights on how organizations can use similar mechanisms and functions that attackers are using so we can defend ourselves, hopefully efficiently. Without further ado, you'll get to know a little bit more about his security ecosystem that he will present to you. And please welcome, with a warm round of applause, security engineer at Google, Arron Thundercliffe. Mm-hmm.
Awesome, thank you. Well, the lights are bright, aren't they? Cool. So yeah, hi, I'm Arron. I'm a security engineer at Google by title. What that essentially means is I get paid to be a massive nerd and work with some really cool tech. So as mentioned, I'm going to talk you through today how attackers are using AI, what that means for us as defenders, and ultimately how we can start to use AI to defend ourselves. So it wouldn't be a Google presentation without referencing M-Trends. Essentially, this is an annual report that the team at Mandiant, that's part of Google Cloud, bring out to go through some independent analysis of what's going on in the market. It might not surprise you to see that high tech is quite high up there, but what I personally found quite surprising is that high tech is actually overtaken financial services. Financial services, government, professional services, healthcare, unfortunately, have been traditionally the highest on the list for many years, but now high tech seems to have increased. And you could kind of argue that most organizations are high tech these days, right? Everyone's starting to adopt AI, so in theory, we're all kind of becoming some kind of technology organization by deploying and building our own AI tools. One of the most interesting things that I found from the report is the exploit percentage. We're all told in security that humans are the weak link. We all make bad decisions. We all click on emails that we shouldn't do. I've personally done it a few times, and I think everyone in the room has. And if you say you haven't, well, you're pretty lucky, and you may be lying a little bit as well. But humans phishing emails only seem to kind of work on that 6% now. And personally, I think this is because of things like Mythos, as we've previously discussed, but also because our defenses are evolving. You know, yes, phishing emails are still there, but users are more educated now. People have phishing defense and protection services. Email filters are getting better. But maybe now humans aren't the weak link so much. Maybe technology is becoming the weak link. Or maybe it already has been the whole time. Now, some interesting stats that I found is global median dwell time is 14 days. Now, that might not seem like a huge amount of time, but if you think about how quickly automation and AI can start exploiting things and move across the network, 14 days is actually pretty horrifying. Backdoors are the most used malware category. That's hardly surprising, in my opinion. And voice phishing seems to be the most common initial infection. And I think this kind of goes through some points that were mentioned previously around, you know, it's becoming increasingly difficult for humans to make that distinction between something that's legitimate and something that isn't. And because there's less compute required for things like voice, it's actually one of the most difficult things for us to distinguish. Now, what are we going to do about it? Well, first of all, we need to take a look at where the AI powered are coming from for us to work out how we can actually defend ourselves against it. AI-led exploits, bot swarms, password sprays, but scarily, to be honest, the adaptive malware is the one that gets me the most. It's all good that we create antivirus, anti-malware, we start building up our protection systems. However, something now can change itself without a human interacting with it. It can scan for backdoors, try to find exploits, and if it comes back with a could not deploy, it will automatically transform itself. It will become a different strain of malware, and it will try again and again and again. And instead of it taking weeks, months, sometimes even a couple of years for an attacker to infiltrate a system, it would literally take seconds or minutes. How we see this sort of developing from the field is the same way that we've kind of been adopting things in real life, right? I'm sure that we all use chatbots on a regular basis. I know I do a lot. I don't actually use Google search anymore. I just go to Gemini and make it search for me because it's more convenient. Well, attackers have done the same thing. You know, they use chatbots. And now instead of something being an advisor, being a chatbot that they can ask questions to, it's literally now being the attacker for them. It may not surprise you to learn that you could literally go to a attack-based AI platform and type infiltrate and business name, and it will go away and try to do it. You need absolutely zero skills anymore, which for me is one of the scariest bits. Now, I'm not discrediting Mythos in any way, just as a disclaimer before I start talking about this, but we would be very, very naive as defenders to believe that it is truly as groundbreaking and revolutionary as what it's looking to be. This is a snapshot of dark web tools that are available on marketplaces. These custom grown malware tools, these custom AI models, these custom LLMs, these jailbroken models are available on dark web marketplaces from anywhere between a few €100 to a few thousand. Now, that may not seem like a huge deal, but take a look at WebGPT at the bottom. Look at how many attack vectors that's able to carry out. Look at how many tools that has available. Tell me that isn't horrifying as a defender, to know that someone can go on a dark web marketplace, spend a few €100, a few $100, and be able to use malware development. It will autonomously move through different reconnaissance tools. It will infect your systems completely automatically with no human input. So Mythos is an incredible tool. It is awesome. But again, we would be naive to believe that attackers didn't have access to tools like this for the last few months, if not years. Now, obviously, I had to put in an AI-generated image in here, right? It would be wrong as a Google engineer to not. But I actually think it did a pretty good job with this. And the point of this image is that the attacks have evolved, and as defenders, we've always been a step behind. That's naturally how it works, right? Someone breaks something, we try to fix it. And that's been the story all along. People created viruses, so as defenders, we created antivirus. People created malware, so we created anti-malware, phishing and phishing defense, and the story goes on. Well, attackers are now using AI. And whilst it may be scary for us, we need to use AI to keep up. There is literally no other way. There is no way, as a human, as a team of humans, as an entire business unit of humans, that we can defend at the same speed that an AI can attack us. We literally have no choice. Now, it was mentioned earlier, Project Glasswing. I didn't know that was going to be mentioned, so this was an awesome coincidence and a really nice plug. But the whole point of my talk today is around building a security ecosystem. And this is something that's already being done by vendors. Google plays quite a big part in this, as does Amazon, Microsoft, Palo Alto, NVIDIA, Apple, the list goes on. Essentially, as was mentioned, this is a closed ecosystem where research and development is taking place by using things like Mythos to start protecting, patching, and researching against some of these vulnerabilities in AI tools. Now, Google has somewhere in the region of 360 billion lines of code that we're contributing towards this program. Somewhere in the region of 40, 50, 60 million different internal workloads, which is pretty insane. But all of this is being contributed towards Project Glasswing, as Amazon is doing, as Microsoft is doing, and even the Linux Foundation. So if vendors are starting to take the view of building a security ecosystem because we're all trying to do the same thing, why shouldn't we as individuals and organizations? So why should we do all of this? Well, we kind of need to start closing that patch gap, don't we? By the time you see that a vulnerability has come out and it's had a risk scoring, someone's already exploited it, someone's been breached, defense has come out, someone's written a report, and then they've published it for you to read. That's not always the case, obviously. Sometimes vendors find these and they patch them in advance and release the scoring and everything else. But there's a good chunk of them that are already exploited in the wild before you even read it. Sometimes that takes days, sometimes it takes weeks. If we're really unlucky, it takes months. But Mythos found a 23-year-old vulnerability in code recently. How many times do you think that's been exploited without anyone knowing? Automation and triage of fixes, well, I kind of think that's self-explanatory, right? With security, we're using AI to find issues. We're using it in SOAR platforms to start remediating different threats and incidents that we see. Well, it kind of makes sense that we start remediating some of the fixes autonomously as well. We all have AI-assisted analysis in pretty much every vendor tool. You are not a security vendor without some sort of AI assistant these days. So we need to start using them better. Some of them have more tools available than others. However, almost all AI assistants inside of security products serve a very good purpose. And as defenders, we need to start learning how to use those tools better to empower us. Not just leave AI there at the side because we feel it's a gimmick. Again, we don't have a choice but to start using this and adopting it. And essentially, we can keep going through, but with a 14-day dwell time for attacks, we have no choice but to be faster. We need to shorten the response time. We need to make better use of the tools that we have, and we need to continuously attack ourselves. It's the only way that we can start finding vulnerabilities. Yeah, it was mentioned in the previous talk about being more proactive. Well, this is a way that you can do it. Think like an attacker. Don't just think, oh, I have a vulnerability management tool that's scanning and I found a CVE9 and I patched it so we're all good. Well, that's not where an attacker is going to stop, is it? So I know that this isn't anything groundbreaking, but at the end of the day, it all comes down to fundamentals. If we're missing the fundamentals, there is absolutely no point us trying to do anything cool and fancy. As with all of security, we're only as strong as our weakest link. So what does this look like in Google? Well, we have an agentic SOC vision. And yes, it's another vendor talking about AI and agentic, and it's a new buzzword, but I personally believe that this is actually kind of cool. The goal with Google SecOps, security operations, chronicle, simplify, depending on how long you followed the story for, is to get us to a point where we can detect something potentially malicious in under a minute. We can then investigate, triage, and respond to it, also in under a minute. Now, that's still maybe a little bit slow, considering that attackers using automation and AI tools are working in milliseconds now. But if you think previously, the 12 times 14 days, this is a pretty substantial step up. It's where we all need to start getting to. And yes, I work for Google, but Google's not the only platform that's starting to do this. So, if you are not familiar with Google or you can't work with Google for whatever reason, other vendors are able to provide similar things too. But essentially, what we need to start looking at, and what we are looking at inside of Google, is different specialized agents that are able to provide tasks that some of the most senior analysts in our teams would do autonomously. We're then looking at putting agent to agent over the top of it. So then your detection engineering agent can speak to your response agent. It can speak to your triage agent. It can start reducing the amount of noise that your analysts are actually looking at by fine-tuning rules for you based on false positives that have been closed. So it's actually making your teams more efficient. Not just reducing the time for this and reducing the time for that and having AI because we all need AI in everyday life now. It's actually making you more useful. It's freeing your engineers up to do what you're paying them to do. So how do we start doing it? Well, obviously, we need to modernize our security operations. Security operations has been around for a very long time. I used to work on ArcSight on-premise, and when I look at where things are now, it's pretty incredible, to be honest. I loved ArcSight. I thought it was fantastic, but then when you look at where things are now, it's like a completely different world. Importantly, we need to gain attacker insights, and this is something that was mentioned in the previous talk as well. Threat intelligence forms one of the most preemptive things, sources of information that we can have as a defender. It teaches us what attackers are actually looking for. It gives us guidance about what the attackers are targeting in our industry, in our geo. And it allows us to then build proactive defenses against that. So taking an intel-led defense approach is the best thing that we have as defenders to give us an advantage against the speed that attackers are operating with. We do that at Google by using frontline intelligence. And what that means is we use the Mandiant incident response teams that are part of the Google family that feed in breach information and incident response analytics live as that's happening. Customers of Google then get direct benefit from that. So the quickest that I've seen is 20 minutes from an analyst writing a report for it being in the incident response platform, in the threat intelligence solution, and then pushed to customers. There's no dwell time there at all. There's no time for you to wait for a breach to happen, for someone to respond, to write a report, to find out what the remediation would be, and then to eventually release something further down the line. That again takes days, weeks, months. Literally 20 minutes was the quickest I've seen, which I think is pretty much as good as you can get. Now, what it looks like inside of Google, which not a lot of people are aware of, because whilst we are Google, we're really bad at marketing. We're good at everyone else's adverts, we're not good at our own. So what I wanted to show you today was the layers in which we operate. So the security operations platform is built on a hybrid of both core Google infrastructure and Google Cloud. What that means is your SIEM's not built on GCP. The SIEM part of the platform is actually built on the same infrastructure GCP is. So imagine a SIEM with all of the resourcing and power of a hyperscaler. It sits alongside search. It sits alongside YouTube. We embed the threat intelligence inside of the platform. Obviously, we sprinkle AI in there because, again, you're not a vendor unless you have AI these days. But ultimately, what it leads us to have is a way to detect, investigate, and respond inside of one platform. So instead of you having a SIEM and a SOAR, or having a SIEM and some sort of automation that comes out of the back of it, everything forms one workflow, from your logs coming in to the remediation taking place. We are moving towards our North Star, as we like to call it, which is an autonomous or an agentic SOC. Now, agentic means anything these days. Everyone has an agent, right? And I think it's kind of lost its meaning in all of the buzzword bingo that's going on. So I like to refer to it as an autonomous SOC, because for me, that has more meaning. It makes more sense. Now, we're not there yet. I'm not sure anyone is, to be honest, because as individuals in the security world, we all have trust issues. It's in literally what we do every single day. So there's a little bit of a way for us to get to an autonomous SOC. But at Google, we're kind of in that semi-autonomous area. We have different AI tools that are available inside of platforms like a triage agent that will give you a breakdown of all of the triage and investigation that we have done inside of the platform and give you a verdict. So you can make a decision. And that agent isn't public Gemini, don't worry. It doesn't actually know who Taylor Swift is, which is a lovely thing that I like to do in a demo, and I think that's how the world should be. But what it is able to do is learn from the Mandiant incident response teams. So it's proprietary, gated, ring-fenced security model trained by Mandiant themselves. Now, this is all good, but not one single vendor on the planet, not one software company can legitimately tell you they solve every single security problem that an organization has. And please, if a software vendor does tell you that, please tell them they're lying, hang up the phone, and walk away. I promise you they're lying. Google cannot solve every security problem an organization has. Microsoft, Amazon, just doesn't happen. There are too many problems. You guys have too many tools. It was already mentioned that everyone wants the best in breed. That works for that appointed problem. But in the same way that the attack surface path spans multiple solutions, your analysts need to look at multiple solutions to find out if you've been breached. How many people have more than 10 security tools in their organization? Does anyone confidently know how many they have? 2, 3, maximum 4? Yeah. It's kind of scary, isn't it? So how do you know if you've been breached? It's a really brave question. Put your hand up if you can confidently say that you would know if you've been breached as an organization. Not one single person raised their hand. It's kind of scary, right? So how do we solve it? Well, as we have software ecosystems, infrastructure ecosystems, and so on, well, my view is let's make a security ecosystem. If vendors are already doing it with things like Project Glasswing, why shouldn't we do that ourselves? If you have lots of different tools where you don't know how you can speak to them, how you can integrate them together because some of them don't, why don't we start taking the same view that attackers have done? Why don't we start orchestrating the AI tools and the platforms that we have by using AI or automation tools. And as I've shown, this doesn't have to be Google. Obviously, the Gemini logo is bigger than all of the others because I work for Google. However, you can use Claude, you can use OpenAI. Please don't use ChatGPT. But there are different AI tools that you can use to orchestrate your ecosystem. What I'm talking about here is building your own autonomous defense. Make use of all of the tools and the features that vendors are giving you inside of their products. Then, through natural language, start communicating with them all in one go. Get a central view of your attack surface. Ask it what your top risks are, and let it go away and speak to all of the different tools that you've paid a lot of money for that specialize in what they do, and it will collate all of that information together and it will give you the output. Now, I'm not talking about giving this thing the keys to the kingdom straight away. Just as when you hire a new security analyst, you're not going to give them domain admin when they log in. Okay? Start soft, go with assisted, and then start building up. Because the power of this could be pretty amazing. As the final thought, what I'd leave you with as potentially a future is the ability for you to ingest some sort of alert into a model that you can create yourself, or some vendors are starting to create as well. And it will autonomously scan through the systems that you give it access to across multiple vendors, multiple technologies, multiple disciplines. It will give you an informed decision about what it believes has happened, why, and when. And then when we're brave enough, we can allow it to autonomously remediate that. This, for me, is the way that we actually start to operate with the same speed and power that attackers are targeting us with. So I'll leave you with that thought. If you'd like to learn more, I'll be around a little bit later. But with that, I will leave you for coffee. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Arron. I will leave the questions exactly as Arron just mentioned during coffee, because I think face-to-face will be more interesting, and that's why we are also here. So I'm inviting you all now for a coffee break. We'll have half an hour. What's it going to be till more or less 12? Let's say we're back here by 12. Remember about the survey if you want to take part in our game and get a VR headset experience and take it home. Just get the QR code, and we'll see each other at 12 with more agentic AI topics, backups, and more. See ya.